Section 2. Video 10. Data flows down. We have four main objectives in this video. 1. To understand that state is local to the component that owns it, and is not accessible to any other component. 2. We will make it clear that a component can pass its state down as props to its child components. 3. We will point out that data flows in one direction only, from the top of the component hierarchy downwards. 4. We will show that different renderings of the same component are independent of each other. Neither parent nor child components needs to know if a certain component is stateful or stateless. This is why state is often called local or encapsulated. State is not accessible to any component other than the one that owns and sets it. A component may choose to pass its state down as props to its child components. To demonstrate this, let's make some minor changes to our clock component. We will start by removing the console log statements. Now, we will add a component that takes the date as props, and formats it. Inside clock, we will render the formatted date component under the Hello World header, passing in the date state as props. React has what is commonly called a top-down or unidirectional data flow. In our example, the clock owns and controls its local date state, and passes it down to the formatted date component via props. Any state is always owned by some specific component, and any data or UI derived from that state can only affect components below them in the tree. If you imagine a component tree as a waterfall of props, each component's state is like an additional water source that joins it at an arbitrary point but also flows down. Different renderings of the same component are independent of each other. To show that all components are truly isolated, we can create an app component that renders 3 clocks. To make it clear that the 3 clocks are independent of each other, we will add a time difference prop, and pass in different values. Unix time stamps are expressed as an integer value that is the number of milliseconds since 1 January 1970. So, we will express the time difference in milliseconds. We will set the first clock to be 1 hour slow, that is, behind 60 minutes, times 60 seconds, times 1000 milliseconds. The second clock will show the current time, that is, with no offset. The third clock will be 1 hour fast. Our clock component now has props. We will now change the definition of the date state to be a Unix time stamp integer instead of a date string. To do that, we use the getTime method. And now, we will add the time difference to the date, which is passed into the formatted date. Finally, we need to convert the Unix time stamp date in the formatted date component to a date string. Save the file, and observe 3 independent clocks showing times that are 1 hour different from each other. We will show you the data flow graphically. At the top of the component hierarchy, we have the app component. The app component renders 3 separate clock components. Each clock component renders a formatted date component. The top-level app component passes a time difference prop into the first clock component, with a value of -1 hour in milliseconds. It passes a time difference prop with 0 value into the second clock component. And it passes a time difference prop of +1 hour in milliseconds into the third clock component. The clock component has local date state, and passes its date state value plus the time difference prop value into the formatted date component state prop. So, data is passed via props from the top of the component hierarchy downwards. To summarize, we showed that state is local to the component that owns it, and is not accessible to any other component. We made it clear that a component can pass its state down as props to its child components. We pointed out that data flows in one direction only, from the top of the component hierarchy downwards. And, we showed that different renderings of the same component are independent of each other. In the next video, we will cover how React handles the user's click events.